XOmniverse, this is Symbolic replying to your video called Is Knowledge Inherently Emotional slash Intuitive? Really interesting video full of ideas. A lot of interesting Plato in there, huh? With your initial definition or the traditional definition you gave of knowledge stemming from Plato as a true justified belief was very interesting. Belief having an emotional component of confidence, very interesting talk. And then also the idea of the intuitive as a part of the unconscious, which has access to the sort of model that we build in our mind. Very interesting, and the fact that people will take a new idea and they'll say, "Well, I have to think about it." What they really mean is that their intuition sort of has to chew on it or process it. Very good. So, just some thoughts. You know, it kind of accounts for instinct as well. I mean, there are certain things that, I mean, if a ferocious animal comes up to me, my instincts inherently respond if it's a ferocious animal. I don't have to process it in a mental model, which is probably kind of slow, right? So there's sort of an instinctual knowledge, you know. Of course, animals have that in abundance. Um, so that maybe is linked to the intuition, but more on a biological level, perhaps. I'm not sure how that would work. Of course, you know, it's all theory. Kind of mix Jung with quantum or biology or something. Some other thoughts that you'd mentioned propositions and analysis of whether a proposition is true. That fits in very well with the Platonic belief, but a lot of knowledge really isn't based on propositions, and I'm wondering, you know, we're sort of our language is kind of it makes knowledge be based on language, which is kind of interesting. That's an interesting thought. Um, whether knowledge is based on language, and without language, we were pre-lingual, whether we really had knowledge. I'm sure we did. But I'd have to think more about that. Another thing, I was thinking that there's another kind of knowledge, you know, propositional knowledge or logic or assertions. We usually view that in sort of a static state of time. I mean, they may relate to the past, and we may believe that they will continue to be true in the future. But the analysis of whether they're true or false kind of happens in this mathematical realm, a sort of static, timeless, eternal mathematical realm. But there's another kind of knowledge, which is the when we say we know how to do something, a skill. Like I can, well, we can have skills at mathematics. We can have skills at carving. We can have skills at driving. You'd mentioned driving yourself. This type of knowledge is a process knowledge of how to do something. And curiously enough, we uh, we don't judge that so much by a true false value, a truth value, but by a quality. What is the quality of the outcome? So we go from truth to quality, or to a sense of excellence, which is fascinating. So now, does that have an emotional content? I mean, when something is excellent, or we can say even beauties, I guess, I suppose, is a form of excellence, right? I don't know. I have to think about that too. But there, excellence does cause a certain kind of satisfaction, maybe a more fraught kind of satisfaction. Excellence can be a sort of exquisite pain too. Beauty tends to be somewhat narcotic and to calm us down, I think. Maybe not. Depends. If it's erotic, it causes angst, but and tension, just like excellence does. That's interesting. But in any event, this idea of quality kind of creeps in, and does that have an emotional component to it? But then again, certain outputs of our process, of our skills, do produce something that we can link to some archetypal model. Like if I'm going to make a tool, if I'm going to make a hammer, I can say, you know, this is a good hammer, and somehow compare it to the archetypal or model hammer in my mind, or archetypal hammer in my intuition, maybe, or unconscious. But other things don't do that. Other things like art, you can't really say, well, with the hammer, I could say, well, this is a true hammer. This is true in the sense, almost uh, how the geometers use the word true. You know, this is true. It aligns somehow, and I could say, yes, this comes close to being a perfect hammer. perfect hammer, archetypal hammer. Therefore, it's a true hammer, and there's maybe a sense of correspondence there that's akin to a truth value. But when we get to the realm of art, uh, we're dealing more with, well, it used to always be beauty, but there are other elements to art now that we've discovered, I suppose. But art, whether or not the truth, at least it's not an external truth. Sometimes maybe it's an internal truth, but uh, it's interesting because we don't judge art really by its truth value, though we do judge it by a quality, a fineness, an element of quality. So quality comes into this other type of knowledge. Um, um, and of course, art perhaps is, I guess, accessible to the intuition. The unconscious mind can do amazing things. It can hold, it can sustain contradictions without conflict. It's just very interesting now how what part of the unconscious mind is intuition. I don't know. But anyway, fascinating video. I like your line of thought. I think that's really rich to explore, and I really enjoyed the video. So thought I would contribute some ideas to it. Thanks very much. Talk to you later. Bye bye. XOmniverse, just a couple of quick afterthoughts, after questions that sort of occurred to me. So, if all knowledge is inherently emotional, intuitive, what are we saying when we say that those books contain knowledge? Or that we have, well, on a computer we store information. We don't call it knowledge, we call it information. But we do about books say that they contain knowledge. So are we saying really that they they can invoke emotion in us in order that we arrive at the truth? Are in that regard, are they just sort of talismans or evocative spells for our intuition? They just serve evocative purposes. Hmm, interesting.